14 on the streets of the major cities of this country, as well as here and other places, are there because their mothers are victims of violence. That's why they leave the home. They have nowhere else to go. The vast majority of children. Kayla and I have spoken a lot about the unfair prison system that exists in this country. The only thing we know for certain about those incarcerated for a violent offense is they have two things in common. One, they can't read, and two, they witness violence against their mothers. Hear me now. You say, well, if that were the case, obviously things would be different. Wrong. Violence is a learned behavior. It's a learned behavior. You would think it was a shock to me hearing all this testimony over the years, that the child who watched his mother be abused has a much greater chance of becoming an abuser of a woman than a child who didn't know it was. It's a learned behavior. The reason I mention that is, if it's a learned behavior, it can be unlearned. If it's a learned behavior, then there's something we can do about this. And so, the resources, as some of the victims you treat can tell you and you know, is that the resources are what keep the lack of resources, would keep an awful lot of women in prison. Ladies and gentlemen, I love men who say, why don't they just leave? Just get up and leave. Just walk away. I would. Let me ask you, how many of you guys, you're in the schoolyard, and the bully had you on the ground, and your mother told you, your father, like was my case, my mother told me, just hit him in the nose. Smack him in the nose, the bleeding, he'll stop. How many of you smacked him? How many of you smacked him? Well, imagine what it is for a woman. Imagine what it is. A woman is 5'3", 110 pounds, standing next to her husband who's 6'2", 200 pounds. She can tell him. She can tell him. Ladies and gentlemen, the most dangerous moment for a woman escaping the prison of domestic violence is the moment she leaves. That is the single most dangerous moment. That's when the most erratic behavior occurs. There's study after study showing this. Unfortunately, I know more about this than I ever wanted to know. And so, folks, when a woman makes that break, when she screws up the courage, imagine the courage it takes. Imagine the courage it takes to look that man in the eye and say, I'm leaving, or just when he leaves, pack up and grab your children, not knowing what in God's name you're going to do, not having any idea where you're going to be able to go, not having any resources. In most of these situations, the man controls all the resources. Knowing that your name is on the house, if you haven't, if you're from a middle-income family or upper income, knowing that you're in a position that you lose everything, and you have nothing, and you have nothing. I set up a thing when we put this bill together called Hotline. A hotline is a place down in Texas that has a significant computer set up, so they take all these incoming calls. We've had over 1 million women, so far, pick up that phone, and usually in tones like this, say, my name is Mary Smith. I can't talk now, but I need help. My husband's in the other room, or my husband just left. Will he be able to get the phone bill? No, I called you. What do I do? Imagine the courage. Imagine the courage it takes to make that phone call. We were dropping calls, thousands of them, because we didn't have the technology. So to show you that there's real good in this world, not just bad, rather than ask for money from the federal government, because at that time the Bush administration and my Republican colleagues weren't particularly interested in seeing much change, I contacted the CEOs of Microsoft, Cisco Systems, all the major, IBM, and I said, I need your help. I want to meet with you. And they met with me. And I said, I want you to give me your best IT person you have. But I want you to come with me down to a call center in Texas. And I want you to set up for me, for them, the single most significant back office of any company you work for, any bank you work for, any major multinational corporation. I need your help. And they said, okay. And I could tell they wanted to help because I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. What happened was, we took them down there. And here's what I asked my staff to do. I made them there before they came up with a solution. I made them listen to the phone calls that were coming in. I asked them to turn up in the PA system the call. So as our staff, Violence Against Women hotline staff, was answering the calls, these corporate executives, could hear what was being said. And one call changed everything. A young woman called, she said, I'm in a mall in Minneapolis. Oh my God, I see him. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm standing between Kids Gap and Radio Shack. And oh God, oh my God, I see him in front. And this went on. And then all of a sudden the phone went dead. That galvanized that group. It made them realize this is real. This is real. As a consequence of that, we now drop no calls. As a consequence of that, now if you call into the hotline, your geopositioning, they can tell you where you are. Up on the screen pops up the nearest police department, the nearest immediate phone number, the nearest women's shelter, the nearest, and it goes on and on. And they can say, stand right there and call the police department, another number to call. Do you have a car near such and such a location? You're saving women's lives. You're saving women's lives. Which brings me to the part that I want to talk about today. And that is what I found in the reauthorization, that's a fancy Senate term for continuing this program in place, in 2000 and then 2005. We added a lot of different things as we became aware of the shortfalls, the holes in, not the intent, but the specifics of the legislation. And we should be funding this at $900 million a year. By the way, I might point out to you that we have done an awful lot of good. You all have done an awful lot of good. We've already spent $4 billion, $4 billion on focusing on nothing to get Violence Against Women and Violence Against Women Act, which, as you know, provides shelter. We found out it's not enough just to provide that shelter, and this is serious shelter. Lovely places for people to be comfortable to take their children, take them. But what happens is these women, they cannot stay there. So we got to have a second step here. How do we help get them from that shelter into decent housing and give them a chance to remake their lives? In my state, because everybody knows the intensity of how I feel about this, I got the entire state judiciary to hold conferences and let me speak to the Mothers Committee, because judges had to be sensitized to this.